everybody. Welcome back to the studio. I'm here with Mr. Kim, and Cheeto's here. He just had a little snack. Oh, I think he's done snacking. Maybe he'll hang out with us. I'm Kimberly Einmo. Welcome to month 7 of Janome's Block of the Month Blitz 2 quilt. You all have done such a great job making all of your blocks. Month 6 was epic when we made this giant 32-inch block, and now we're ready to put it all together. So the first thing you're going to want to do is go to the Janome website and print out your month 7 handout. It's just one page this time because this will go along with the video, and I'm going to walk you through every step of putting the quilt together. So are you ready to dive in and finish your quilt top? I'm excited. Mr. Kim's giving me the thumbs up back there. So let's talk about what you should do. Now I have a design wall, and if you have a design wall, even a temporary one, that's fine. But you know, for many, many years, I just used an obliging bed top like a king-size bed or the floor to lay out all my parts and pieces, all my blocks and units. So if that's what you have, make it work. It'll be just fine. You're going to want to have all of your background pieces cut, which you probably already cut way back in month 1. Go find those, dig them up, and have all your blocks ready. Then we're going to lay everything out just as it shows here. And I've got everything labeled with the block letter. Make sure when you're laying your blocks out that you're gradating the rotation of the blocks so that they flow colors into each other. Like here, the pansies flowing into here. We've got the purples and the grapes flowing into the pinks and reds. The reds flow into the flame, and then it goes back the other way. So just take some time to lay out your blocks. Put in your spacer pieces. All of the sizes of the background fabric pieces are labeled accordingly. You'll see them here. You should have already had those cut. Make sure you've got everything laid out. Then put in your beautiful flying geese strips, and finally your big, big block. That's the very first thing we need to do to get started. From here, we're going to start the quilt top assembly. And what I'm going to suggest that we do right up front is that we're going to sew these blocks to these 2.5 by 8.5 inch spacer pieces. So I want you to carefully line these up and sew them to the background fabric spacer pieces all the way down, and make sure that you get these blocks and these spacer pieces together. Let's do that first. Make sure when you press your background fabric pieces, you're pressing towards the background fabric. And then I'm going to have you add on the strips. The background fabric strips that are 2.5 inches by 48.5 inches, we're going to sew those on to either side of this unit, and then we'll come back here, put it back up on the design wall, and move on to the next step. I have sewn my blocks together with those spacer strips, but I thought I'd just pop in here quickly before I add these 48.5 inch by 2.5 inch background fabric strips. You know me, I don't much like to do a lot of pinning unless it's necessary, but when adding these spacer strips that are longer than the 8.5 inches in between the blocks, I actually do like to pin, because I don't want there to be pulls or puckers along the way. I want to make sure that the blocks are eased along the length of these strips. So the best way to do that is to find your halfway point on both the blocks themselves and the halfway point on your strip, and put a pin there. Then go to the ends. Go to each end and put another pin or a clip. You can use those Wonder Clips if you want. Put a pin at the ends of each strip and blocks. And Cheeto's kind of making it tough for Mr. Kim today. But then what you can do is hold the center point and the end and just kind of give it a tug until it's taut, and kind of even out the fabric along the length of the blocks here. Whoops, pull this back up on your work surface, even it out, and once it seems to be nice and in place, go ahead and add a few more pins. By doing this, your feed dogs will be able to ease in any of the places where it's not exactly perfect. The feed dogs do a great job of easing that in between the pins. Now, don't sew over your pins by any means, but make sure that you have just a few pins along the way to hold that little background fabric strip in place. Do the same thing on this side. Just kind of give it a tug until it's evenly distributed, and then add a few more pins just to hold everything in place while you stitch this down. And use your perfect scant 1/4 inch seam, and you will find that when you get ready to press these pieces, that you will have a beautiful strip and your blocks will all lay really, really flat. It's a good tip, and your feed dogs really are your best friends here when it comes to easing in any discrepancy. Great job. Now you have this whole section on the far right of your quilt done. Time to move on to the next section. The next thing I want you to put together are these blocks here, blocks E, G, D, and B, with those 8.5 by 2.5 inch spacer strips. Sew these all together, press toward the background fabric spacer strips, and then I want you to add on this strip right here. It's 2.5 by 34.5 inches. Just add this one to it. It's going to go across the top of these blocks, then meet back here.
So you don't want them to do the bottom one, right?
Not just yet. That's coming up, but we got something to do in between. We have this beautiful piece all sewn. Now this bottom strip is going to be one of the last things we sew on, along with the top strip. So don't worry about those just now. Now I want you to get out your seam ripper. Yeah, I know that kind of sounds a little strange. Mr. Kim's behind the camera going, ah! But there's a reason. I'm always looking for the easiest, the path of least resistance, so to speak, when it comes to putting things together. And I realized that we had kind of a conundrum going on in this area with this little flying geese unit still attached to this. So what I'm going to suggest is you take your seam ripper and you rip off this little flying geese unit, which I already did, obviously. Once you do that, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to have you sew that flying geese unit to this little block right here. Let's get these sewn together and then press the seam open. I think that's going to make it a lot easier. Join these two, set them aside. Then we're going to take this strip right here and we're going to sew this strip to this flying geese unit here. Sew it along the top edge here, press toward the background fabric strip, and then you can add this little strip or this little unit, which measures 6.5 by 4.5, sew it to this, and then you'll have a unit that's all put together. The next thing we can do after that is sew this to this. So we'll have this strip here being sewn to this right here, these flying geese right here. You'll see how easy it'll be to put this all together. I just need to press this seam closed first, like we do all the time, and then I'm going to press the seam allowance toward the background fabric strip on these beautiful gradated flying geese. The reason that I thought I'd just have you stop in here is I am going to use my strip stick or use something like a miniature pressing ham, because you do want to press this little J unit, this square, and your flying geese open. There's a lot happening right at the intersection there, and I managed to get a really pretty point, but we do want to press that seam open because it otherwise could get really lumpy and bumpy there. So I recommend pressing that seam open so we can make it as nice and flat as possible and accentuate that perfect point. All right, brilliant job. That's exactly how it should look. The neat thing is it's nice and flat there. It's not so lumpy and bumpy anymore. And now all we need to do is sew this unit on to the end here. So we have our orange flying geese coming in towards block J. So we're just going to flip this over, and you can pin just to make sure you get those perfect points, and go ahead and sew that last seam. That wasn't so bad, was it? And it sure makes it a heck of a lot easier in this area when it could have been a little weird to try to get all that together. So I think it's absolutely worth taking this flying geese unit off and sewing it to this unit. Next steps, we're going to sew this unit, the flying geese unit, to these blocks. Make sure you sew these together, and then take this flying geese unit and sew it to your big block. Let's get those sewn, and then we'll pop back in here and talk about what's next. Every seam we sew gets us one seam closer to completing the quilt top construction. We've got the flying geese unit sewn to our big block, and we've sewn these units together. The next logical step would be to sew this unit to this unit, and I want you to go ahead and do that. Press everything, and then you can go ahead and add this strip on the far left, the left side strip. Go ahead and add that, and we'll meet back here when it's all put together. This is coming together beautifully. Aren't you loving how easy it really is to put this all together? Just a couple seams left now. All right, here's what we're going to do. Now we need to sew this whole unit to the center, press, and then you can add your top and bottom strips. Let's get all that done, get everything pressed, and we'll meet back here one last time. Bravo, everybody, you did it. We have created the beautiful Janome 2022 Block of the Month Blitz quilt from start to beautiful finish. I am so very proud of you. Cheeto's actually very proud of you. So is Mr. Kim. It's been really fun having Cheeto in the studio and Mr. Kim all throughout the process. I hope you're as excited as I am for you to have completed this beautiful, beautiful top. So no matter what machine you have, I hope you consider quilting it yourself, finishing it yourself. You can be as simple with just straight lines or wavy lines, or you can do custom quilting, or for those of you who simply like to piece quilts. Let me give you the encouragement and permission to go ahead and send it out to a long armer and let them finish it so you can move on to the next piecing project. Do what you love. Don't stress about UFOs or, oh, I really should quilt it. If that's not your thing, send it out, let someone else do it, and you move on to what's fun. We have learned so much through the process, and I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for joining me on this journey. It's been really fun. You've graduated. Now you're on to bigger and better things. And I'll tell you a little secret. I'm already planning the next year's big Janome project, but it's a mystery. It's going to be something a little different, but I promise you it's going to be fun, fun, fun. So get your quilts done, get your tops done, post pictures on the Janome Sewing Machines page. just share on your page. Let's get the pretty pictures out there of this beautiful quilt. And I will see you next time for Janome. Take care, everybody. Bye.
Bye, everybody.